Well, welcome back to Russell Does Stuff. My name is Russell. That's the name my mom gave me. She wanted to call me something else, and I'm glad she didn't. I was I was born, I think, in the 70s, early 70s. I'm 52 and a half. So that would put me born around Thanksgiving. And the reason I bring that up is this. We're all born with something, okay? Uh, an ability to sing, athletic ability. We all remember being at the bus stop, and that one kid in the neighborhood ran faster than everyone else. There was that one kid that was stronger than everyone else. And then there was skinny, buck-toothed, hair combed sideways, red wool sweater wearing Russell. Okay? Yeah, even back then, Russell Does Stuff wore funny clothes. Okay? We were poor. We grew up with very little. My mom and dad, they worked very, very hard to have to get what we had. Okay, we fought over a bowl of corn. You know, each one of us got a chicken leg. And then we would try to play jokes on the other to get us to look away from our plate. And the other one would grab a roll or something. So it was quite a competition back then for survival. I was the oldest of three boys, and I survived the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and I don't really keep up with the generational stuff, Gen Zs, Gen X. I don't get any of that stuff. You know, every time I hear that kind of stuff, I'm trying to remember what we were called back in the 80s and the 70s. So back to we're all born with something. Anxiety runs in my family on my dad's side. And I think my mom had it also, but she doesn't really talk about it. So anxiety is a normal emotion that people have, and for a good reason. If you're out walking in the woods and a bear jumps out in front of you, you get anxiety, and your adrenaline turns on, and the fight flight mode kicks in, and unless you're Clint Eastwood, you run away. You hot tail it out of there. That's why you see people, when they get scared, they just turn around and they run into a wall, or they'll run into a tree or something. Their oxygen's going to different parts of your body, your organs, and you're not getting the correct amount of oxygen in the frontal lobe of your brain. Okay? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm none of that stuff. This is just stuff I picked up, from doing research. If you feel funny, you want to know why. When I started a business and it wasn't going as planned, okay, I would get higher levels of anxiety, and, some levels of depression, okay. Not clinical depression like some people have. You could call it the blues. A lot of people write songs about the blues, but it's not that. It's a feeling of being stuck, and you're not going forward, and you feel like you're not going backwards, and you're just stuck. So I wasn't aware of it. And if you're lucky enough to have somebody in your life that can kind of see that, you're in a funk, and they care about you, and you know, they'll let you know, hey, you're in a funk. You're not being your normal self. You're not out doing things. You're not walking the dogs. You're not doing this and that. And that's totally normal. So I remember about 16 years ago, 17 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, us left-handed people aren't real good with dates and numbers and stuff, but we can remember everything. We just can't remember the date that was on, but we can remember everything. I can paint you a picture of this, what I was doing in third grade. Okay, we have really good imagery, remembering pictures in our head. So she says, "What's going on? You're not motivated. You're in a funk." And I'm like, how do you know? I mean, you're at work all day, and I'm here trying to start a business, and things aren't going right, and I don't have any customers, and I don't have any money, and and I got all this pressure on me and stuff. And she goes, "You know what you need to do?" And I said, "What?" She goes, "Go cut your hair." I says, "Go cut my hair. Whether it needs it or not, go cut your hair." I said, "All right." She goes, "Take a shower." Okay. Take it in cold water. All right. So I did that. And then she goes, "Put on some of your nicer clothes. Go get your cowboy hat. Go throw on a nice shirt. And let's just go to the mall or to a store. Okay, let's get out of the house. Get you away from this. In the dump zone, in this funk zone you're in." And you know what? That worked. And even though I'm not with her anymore, I have never forgotten that. I guess she had a boyfriend or something, or who was always going through a funk and stuff. And that was some really good advice. And whenever I'm in, feeling low or whatever, I remembered that. So I'll go cut my hair. I like to get the garden hose out and just stand under the garden hose, for 10 or 15 minutes. Okay. There's a connection between cold water and your nervous system. Okay. And it'll get you out of the funk, I know some of these influencers, if they're, wealthy, they got dunk pools and they can take ice baths and stuff. And I think there's a connection between cold water in your nervous system and your emotional state. It just wakes you up, Some of my best memories are as a kid playing in the rivers in Tennessee. That water's 35 degrees. You got a pair of Kmart shoes on, pair of zips, and you're jumping around in that water and running through the rocks and stuff. I never forget those times. They were some of the best times in my life, and I'd like to go back and recreate those times. Cold water. Shave your face. It'll get you out of that funk. It'll lift you out of it. Well, it works for me. And I thought I'd share that with everybody, Just standing underneath the garden hose, as corny as it sounds, works. Okay? And I had to do that today. I cut my hair, trimmed up my face, put on one of my best shirts, stood under the garden hose, And now I feel like a new man, you know. This doesn't discriminate. This happens to wealthy people, billionaires, broke people. People are just getting over a relationship or starting a business. This stuff, you know, it happens to everybody, you know. The anxiety thing, some people have that knob turned up a little bit more than others, okay? Another thing that works is, you know, watch, this is corny, but watch some old Westerns, you know, watch some of the movies from the 60s, you know. That seems to increase, you know, the testosterone levels, and, you know, that stuff, believe it or not, it helps with the emotional state of your body. So I probably alienated all my subscribers, but it's my reality. Okay. Cold water, cut your hair, throw on some clothes, get out of the house. I said to the old lady, I said, hey, I need to change the pace tonight. Let's just get out and go walk along, you know, the water, and take a staycation. And then, you know, you have that vigor and you feel refreshed and you feel renewed, you know. It's the dog days of summer. They just started, you know. And it's real easy to feel depleted, feel run down and stuff. I'm drinking, you know, 100% fruit juice. To tag along on some thoughts from the last video, the things I do and don't do, I won't have a beer until after 5 o'clock, okay? And then I won't have a beer after 8 o'clock. And there's no exceptions, you know, like for Friday night or Saturday night or whatever, so. But if you're feeling funky and you're not feeling, you know, on top of your game, and you're feeling the blues or whatever, and things aren't going right, we have the power to do something about it. Well, I hope this helps someone out. If it does, great. This is, you know, I'm speaking from experience. Standing underneath the garden hose at 4 years old or 52.5 years old. There's something to it. Well, this is Russell with Russell Does Stuff, and I appreciate you guys stopping by, and I'll catch you on the next one.